Hey ladies, it's me, your master procrastinator, better known as Alicia, your local loveaholic. I've actually been spending a lot of time just loving myself, loving life, and loving this change and transformation that I've been going through. I've been taking a lot of time to redirect my energies inwards and towards myself. But I know it's been some time since we were last here, and so just to go ahead and put some reminders out there before we get started. If you need some wine or water, weed, or whatever you choose to wet your whistle while we unpack, journal, or take notes, say that 5 times fast. But if you're missing anything that you need, you can pause here, you can get it. And once you're ready and relaxed, let's get to the heart of it. So today's the full moon in Capricorn, and I thought it was a perfect time to talk on today's topic, although I have been thinking about this for quite some time. But because this moon is all about taking a moment to really step back and analyze your life and just ask yourself, what could possibly be holding me back? What energies am I holding on to that are preventing me from being able to transform or elevate my life in the direction that I want it to go? It's really a perfect time to release trauma bonds, unhealthy relationships, or grudges, or just whatever no longer really serves you, that may be holding you back or that you're holding on to. So in honor of this, I wanted to talk about one of the things that really helped me with the process of forgiveness and to really start seeing my life the way that I always knew was possible. So today we're going to talk about mirrors. When you think about mirrors, what comes to mind? Glass, reflections, plastic, images, selfies. Those are the first things that come to mind when I think about the word mirror. And then I went ahead and looked it up in the dictionary, as always. And a mirror is defined as a piece of glass with a shiny, metal-covered back that reflects light, producing an image of whatever is in front of it, to represent or show something honestly. And the people that we interact with, that we partner with in various ways, those people are our mirrors. They reflect our perfections and our imperfections, our fears and our flaws, even our magnificence and our excellence. So many years ago, my yogi and friend explained to me that the people in our lives are reflections of who we are. And I thought I understood what she meant at that time, but I know now that I only understood it more on a surface level. And it wasn't until more recently when I was ready to start to really look at myself beyond being a victim in my circumstances and wanting to remember who it was that I truly am, what makes me me, and what it is that I truly desired. So again, it wasn't until I started looking at life that way that I truly started to understand what she meant. So I started looking at things from a new perspective and unpacking all of the traumas and unpleasantries of my life so that I could make space for that fire that's burning inside, just to make it brighter. But in order to unpack those traumas, one of the things that I had to do was just take a look at the significant relationships in my life and look at the things about that person that I judged or that triggered me, and then look in the mirror and see how that person or those qualities about them that I judged actually reflected in me. And let me tell you that it is a very humbling experience. But it also helps you to learn to have more compassion and understanding for others and to release judgment and resentment or any grudges that you may have. So I've been doing this exercise on all levels of relationships in my life, but I did start this exercise with my ex because this was the relationship that the epiphany really took place around, and it's really where I started. So I've been divorced for quite a few years, and I knew intuitively at the time that it was the best decision to make. But when I was looking at things from a place of ego, it just caused so much unnecessary pain. Pain for myself, pain for my children, and I'm sure pain for him as well. It wasn't until I chose to start looking at things from a perspective of what was this relationship trying to teach me? What was the lesson that I needed to learn, that I was able to take proper steps towards understanding what I needed to continue to change within myself. I mean, it's not unusual that ego was involved in the beginning, because after 20 years together, there was bound to be a lot of ego and pain, because the life that you once thought that you saw or that you were supposed to have is no longer. But again, it's about taking that ego out of the situation and just seeing things for what they really are, the lessons behind them. Now, when you're doing this type of exercise, the reflection may not be identical, but you do see how on some level the reflection is your own. Like, I would say, think of those fun mirrors that you see at the carnival, or if you haven't been to carnivals, I'm sure that you may have seen them on TV or in the movies, where there's that fun house, and as you step in front of each mirror, there's a distorted image of yourself. So that's kind of what I look at or think of when I think about this whole exercise about mirrors. So it's really still a reflection, but just not exactly the same. So when I started to take a look, little by little, I started to see and understand on so many levels that he was abusive and I was abusive. And it wasn't until I took a specific class and there was more information that was provided on what abuse really is that I was able to see and understand this. So abuse, which is centered in power and control, comes in many forms. Going over those forms was such an eye-opener for me, because it was shocking to see all of the ways that I have either been a victim of or a perpetrator of abuse in my life. Now, I know this could be triggering for some of you, so if you do need to, you should probably skip ahead, maybe about 5 minutes or so. But for those of you that are still tuning into this part of the podcast, I'm just going to go over a few of the different elements of abuse and what they entail. So emotional abuse is one that includes teasing, invalidating feelings, using guilt, blaming the other person for everything, being jealous, threatening, withholding affection, waking the individual up at obscene times for no reason, the silent treatment, and stalking. Intellectual abuse is having to prove things to the other person, playing mind games, demanding perfection, making the other person feel stupid, attacking their ideas and opinions, manipulation of information, and telling them that they're crazy. Financial abuse is calling welfare, limiting access to money, making the other person accountable for every penny that they spend, controlling the money, closing bank accounts on that person, creating debt that the other person is not able to get out of, not paying child support, taking care of your own needs, but in a way that is blatantly disrespectful to the other person in the relationship and not taking care of theirs or giving them the ability to be able to take care of theirs. There's even pets and property abuse, which is killing or threatening pets, punching walls and doors, throwing things, damaging vehicles, smashing and breaking things. Psychological abuse is intimidating gestures or actions, threatening suicide, threatening to kill the other person, displaying weapons, denying that you even said things, or making light of the abuse. Physical abuse entails blocking exits, driving too fast with the other person in the car, locking that person out of the house, intimidating them, punching or kicking them, spitting on them, choking them, hitting them, restraining them. Verbal abuse includes name calling, swearing, yelling at the other individual, insulting them, being condescending, being sarcastic. Sexual abuse is threatening to or having an affair, forcing of manipulating sex, sexual put-downs, criticizing how the person dresses, withholding sex, comparing them to others, using pornography excessively instead of being with the other person, demanding sex as payment. Spiritual abuse would be putting down that other person's faith, cutting them off from their church, using your church or faith to your advantage, soul-destroying behavior, using scriptures against the other person. Abuse can also entail using children, whether it be abusing children, threatening to harm or take children away, refusing to make support payments, belittling the other person in front of the children, using visitation as leverage. Social abuse would be isolating someone from their friends and family, monitoring their phone calls or mileage, dictating who they can see and talk to, and preventing them from working. And then the last would be using culture. So in this case, it would be using your culture as an excuse for abuse, putting down another person's culture, forcing another person to adopt your cultural practices, and doesn't allow them to participate in mainstream culture. So as you can see, there's a lot of different types of abuse. And I mean, if you need to pause here as you think about the different types and how this may have actually impacted your life in some way that you may not have even known before, I definitely think that it's important to take some time. But again, this was a very eye-opening experience to me because it helped me to see and understand how within my own relationship, I have been emotionally abusive. I've been jealous. I have used guilt as a way of being abusive. But it's also been where, on the other hand, as a mirror, there was the withholding of affection. There was the being inconsiderate and waking me up at all hours when I was supposed to be sleeping for him to go to work. There's the not being accountable for your own actions and blaming me for all the problems in the relationship. But then these are also things, as I think about them, that we both learned in some aspect growing up with our families. And then I had to come to the fact or terms with the fact that I have been intellectually abusive. Where I would say things that would make him feel less than, or the need to prove that I was right and he was wrong when it came to certain things educationally or intelligently. But on the same hand, there was the attacks of my ideas and opinions, or the manipulation of information on his end, like leaving out a lot of the important details in order to make it seem that he was always right and never telling the full picture or the full story, or telling me that I was crazy for things that I knew for a fact were going on, with whether it be cheating or so many different things that came up within a relationship. Even when it came to different things such as verbal abuse. I mean, I could be condescending and sarcastic. And I know in a sense it was a defense mechanism. And then there was where we both yelled at each other. And verbal abuse was something that I encountered significantly growing up in my household. In a sense, there was sexual abuse between us because he would be the one that would always use sex or withholding sex as a means of I don't want to say getting his way, but if things were not done the way that he wanted them to be done at home, that would be his mechanism with withholding sex. So again, with looking at these different aspects of abuse and looking at how you've either encountered these or you've been a victim. It's important not only to recognize it, but to also understand that it doesn't have to be that way and that there is always time for change. So as I continue to evaluate this relationship and I continue to take the time to look in the mirror, I would look at myself and I'd be like, damn, I can be manipulative just like he could. He wasn't the only parent that was shitty. I could be a shitty parent at times too. And he wasn't the only one that was an opportunist and used people. I've had opportunities where I've used people as well, including him. And I think that the most difficult, gut-wrenching, made me want to crawl up in the fetal position, snot-nose cry realization that I had was that I did not love and respect myself. So it was really no secret that my ex stayed with me as long as he did in hopes of benefiting off of the fact that my dad was well off financially. And at some point in our relationship, I even accepted it myself. But after taking time to look at our relationship, it helped me to realize that I was also using him on some level. Not financially, of course, because that just wasn't a possibility within the dynamics of our relationship. But it was more so that initially I started dating him as a way to distract myself from the fact that I had just escaped a violent relationship. And I was only using him to try to fill a void that I felt within myself. So, I mean, on some level, that is using someone. I look at us both and I see how we were both caught up in keeping up appearances to the outside world. We both wanted to fit in and feel accepted. We both wanted to keep up appearances of that American dream. Him more focused on the financial aspect, and I would say I was more focused on the familial aspect. So in my mind, all of those years, I was just simply really afraid of being a statistic. I wanted to have that image of the 70-year marriage with all of the kids having the same parents, but really at what cost? So doing this evaluation helped me to understand that staying in a marriage out of convenience and fear of being divorced contributed to my depression for so many years. And that depression in turn contributed to my absence as a mother. So in a sense, I did all of the things that I thought I was supposed to as a mom. Like I was an active volunteer in their schools. I was the room mom. We did girls' days together. I chaperoned field trips. I was even a Girl Scout troop leader. Like I was the primary one to do homework with them, to work on projects. I would take them to work with me whenever there was an opportunity. But then as I thought about it, the emotional connection really wasn't that strong, or as strong as it should have been after each of my girls reached a certain age. So although I felt like I was being present by physically being there with them so much, my emotional connection started lacking. And I realized that it started lacking around the age that my inner child was worst wounded. I was so disconnected with myself back then that I spent so much time focusing on trying to get their father to be a dad to them that I missed a lot of key, emotionally crucial moments in their lives. I also see how both of our limited and differing views on parenting, just based on how we were raised, failed our children. Our children grew up with versions of us that they didn't deserve. They grew up with a version of me that was so lost and drowning for so long, and a version of me that did not love herself. Now, if you remember in the last episode, wait, how can you even remember? That was like donkey years ago. So I definitely recommend listening to it again. But in that episode called Trust, everything in me kept screaming, this boy does not love me. And I understand that the reason why it took me so long to really face it was because on some level I knew that that meant that I would have to face the fact that I lacked love for myself too. Now, don't get me wrong, I do hold gratitude for these realizations because although difficult to admit at the time, it brought me to a place where I was ready to take true accountability towards my rebirth and my happiness. I had finally understood that I did not need to rely on someone else for my emotional stability. But this also brought me to a place where I could finally release any resentment and malice towards my ex and start to hold compassion instead. I mean, after all, if he was a reflection of me, I too was a reflection of him. And so although my reflection has changed, I look back and I recognize the need for external validation. I recognize that wounded inner child and the insecurities in him. And there are things that he continues to do and say that can make it really difficult. But I also understand that it took me to actively seek out my healing and working on myself for many years before I got to a point where I could even start to see things differently. And he's not there yet. So I look at all the things that I've done or said out of a place of ego or pain. And I understand that until he's ready to truly sit with himself and face himself in the mirror, he will continue to operate the way that he does towards me and our children. And again, don't get me wrong, he has said and done some really foul shit that has us really fucked up. But my focus is on moving forward in my journey of self and becoming the version of myself that I know I can be. And I look at it like, had we not gotten divorced and I remained in the marriage, I would have never been able to have the space that I needed to step back and look at myself. If I had jumped into another relationship before starting this journey, I honestly would have just run into the same issues. They could have been in the same way, they could have been in different ways, but I would have had the same issues in the next relationship. And I would have just been as unhappy and miserable because I would have attracted someone to mirror the same shadows and faults and insecurities. But I would have been caught up in seeing what was wrong with them, just as I did with him, instead of seeing what needed to be worked on within myself. And I would not have been able to come to a place of forgiveness either. Now, forgiveness is a crucial piece of this journey. There would not have been room for that joy that I've been feeling if I did not find the ability to forgive. So doing this exercise with looking at myself in the mirror, it's helped me to truly understand what it means when they say hurt people, and realize that I had to forgive myself also for the actions that I'd taken from a place of pain. Actions that I've taken towards myself and towards others. I also understand and am accepting that although I may not know the pain behind the actions that have been taken towards me directly or indirectly by others, that they too need forgiveness because the action was really more about themselves and the pain that they were experiencing than anything that they directed towards me. So once I was able to come to a place of forgiveness or understanding with my ex, I started to evaluate the patterns with other significant male relationships throughout my life. The relationships that I grew up with, the examples that I provided to our daughters. And I've been able to come to a place of forgiveness and whole compassion for most. I think I'm still having a very difficult time fully forgiving and holding compassion for my father. And each time that I think I'm there, he finds a way to trigger me. But I know that I'll get there. And I know that each time that I was bold enough to look in the mirror, and as I continue to do this work, I see less of the wounded reflections and I see more of me. I look at who I was before the toxic relationships, before the trauma, who I became because of them, and who I wanted to be or who I knew myself to be as I healed from those connections. And I no longer choose to trauma bond or see things from a place of ego. I want it to be that when I look around at the people that are in my life that are a reflection of me, that these people are a reflection of me on a soul level, on a higher conscious level, really on a heart level. And when I look at the people that have remained in my life over these years, and those that I've met since I've been doing this work, I am excited to see the connections that I've made that are based off of this new version of me. And I'm even more excited about the new connections to come as I continue to do this work. I'm at a place where I know what I want for myself and what I want for our daughters and what I think everyone deserves, which are relationships that are built on truth, integrity, trust, intimacy, and real love. But these are things that begin within ourselves. I feel like I didn't really get a chance to uncover my truths or to learn to trust myself just based on so many factors growing up. And sometimes it's hard to really do that when you not only have everyone telling you who you should be and what you should do, but also when you settle down too early before gaining a true sense of self. So no wonder I was so unhappy. But the important thing is that doing all of this has made room for so much joy in my life. You know, I was talking to my cousin the other day, and we were talking about how that peace that comes with forgiveness and how it makes space for the joy. And being in a place of gratitude, in a place where I have been allowing myself to feel joy, has opened my eyes to the possibilities of how much more joyful and fulfilling life can be. You know, people looked at me like I was crazy to believe in fairy tales and happily ever after, but I'm honestly glad that on some level I held on to those beliefs because I see that happily ever after does exist. Not to say that life will not continue to have highs and lows, but happily ever after is creating the life that feels best for me. And for me, that life is centered on love, light, and pleasure. Now, I encourage you to evaluate the significant relationships in your life when you're ready. If there's anything that's come up for you while you were listening today, you know, I encourage you to also just to stand up and shake out that energy. So you can just shake your body however you feel led to. Take note of any areas of tightness or tension within the body, and let's just try to shake that out. Now, I'd like you to also come to a comfortable position, either seated or lying down. Just close your eyes and let out a big exhale, sinking deeper into your position. Take a moment to scan your body for any discomforts and make any adjustments you need to relax even further into comfort. Now you can take a few deep breaths inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Breathing in deep into the bottom of your belly and expanding the lungs. And on each exhalation, release the sound like this. Just allowing the vibration of the sounds to break up any energy that needs to be released. So we're going to do this a total of 6 times. So again, breathe deep into the bottom of your belly through the nose, expanding the lungs. And then you're going to exhale. Deep breath in through the nose, deep into the bottom of your belly, expanding the lungs. When you're ready, exhale. Deep breath in through the nose, into the belly, expanding the lungs. Again, exhale. Deep breath in through the nose, down into the belly, expanding your lungs. And exhale. You should feel a little more relaxed now. And I want you to place your hand on your heart, eyes remaining closed, and you can either just listen or repeat after me. I am ready to open my heart to myself. I forgive myself for all the ways that I have hurt myself and others. I forgive myself for making mistakes. I forgive myself for not understanding. I release any behavior that is no longer working in my highest good. I forgive those that have hurt me, and I release any power that they hold over me. I bring love and healing to all my thoughts, beliefs, and relationships. I am ready to open my heart to myself. Now I want you to cross your arms over your chest and embrace yourself. Give yourself the hug that you've needed, whether it be a tight, warm embrace or a soft embrace. I want you to feel into the experience of being the giver of this hug. And also feel into the experience of being the receiver of this hug. Now take a few more breaths here. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So I want to thank you for joining me on this journey of self-love. And of course, you can feel free to follow me on Instagram at Self-Love and Alchemy. Please feel free to leave comments if this helped you in any way. And it's also the best way to keep up with any events, activities, or offerings that we have coming up. And thanks for joining us again on Let's Get to the Heart of It. Until next time.